You're stuck at B1. You spend hours watching hundreds of videos on YouTube trying to figure out how to get to a solid B2 level of English. But the real problem is knowing exactly which topics to study to get there. After teaching intermediate learners for 20 years, I have identified 13 main topics that you need to master in order to get to a solid B2 level of English at least 3 times faster. So, if you are tired of wasting time, here are the topics you need to master to get to a true B2 level of English. Hey there, how's it going? Thiago here, and welcome to another video. I am a Cambridge certified English teacher and I have been teaching English for 20 years. I know all about this struggle of moving from B1 to B2 and then later from B2 to C1 and C2. So if you are a learner who is stuck in that intermediate level, I'm here to help you. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the exact topics you need to know to get to a solid B2 level of English. So I've broken this video down into 2 parts. We're going to be covering here first the main grammar topics you need to master at B2 level and the main vocabulary topics. So let's get started with the vocabulary topics. Listen, to move from B1 to B2, a learner, you, must master a wider range of grammar with more confidence and flexibility. It is not just about knowing the rules, but about using them correctly to communicate more complex ideas. So, when it comes to grammar, here are the main topics you need to master. So, let's talk a little bit about verbs and tenses here. First of all conditionals. If you have any hope of getting to a solid B2 level of English, you need to master all conditionals. A B2 learner can confidently use different types of conditional sentences, including mixed conditionals. For example, instead of saying, if you are hungry, you can eat, a B2 learner can also say, if I had known you were hungry, I would have cooked dinner. You see, that is third conditional, which is much more complex and advanced. Or, if she were more experienced, she wouldn't have made that mistake yesterday. You see, that is mixed conditional. So, if she were more experienced, that is second conditional. She wouldn't have made that mistake yesterday, that is third conditional. So, putting second conditional along with third conditional in the same sentence, we call it a mixed conditional. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, that is one topic you need to master if you hope to get to a true B2 level of English. Next topic, future forms. A B2 learner uses a variety of future forms to express different levels of certainty or purpose. It's not just about will. If you only use will or won't to talk about the future, you will not get to a solid B2 level of English. You need to use other future forms. For example, you can use going to. You can use present continuous with future meaning. Or you can even say something like this. Listen, the train is due to arrive in 10 minutes. Did you hear that? The train is due to arrive in 10 minutes. This is future. And it communicates certainty about the future. But you see, I'm not simply saying the train will arrive soon or the train will arrive in 10 minutes. I am saying the train is due to arrive in 10 minutes. Really cool, isn't it? So, using a variety of future forms is another trait of a solid B2 level learner. Next topic you need to master, modal verbs. Learners at this level can use modal verbs for deduction and speculation in the past. For instance, she didn't answer her phone. She must have been in a meeting. Let me say that again. The example. She didn't answer her phone. She must have been in a meeting. What I'm doing here is I'm using the modal must plus have and past participle been to communicate an idea in the past, and I am making a deduction because the fact is she didn't answer her phone. Now, let me speculate about that. Let me make a deduction. She must have been in a meeting. She must have been in a meeting that is past, and I'm making a deduction. You see, so it's also about being able to use modals like must, could, and should, for example, in the past. Are you able to use those freely and correctly? Do you use those when you speak English? If you don't, you are not at B2 yet. Next topic you need to master, the narrative tenses. To tell a coherent story, a B2 learner effectively combines tenses like the past simple, past continuous, and past perfect. So, when talking about the past, if you only use past simple, for example, yesterday I went to the mall. Then I had a burger. After that, I saw a movie with my family, and the movie was fun. When the movie finished, I went home. You see, this is all past simple. It's pretty boring to tell a story like this because all I'm doing is sharing one event after the other. It's just a sequence of events in the past. That's not really a story. If you want to make any past experience that you have been through more interesting when you share it with other people, you want to use other past tenses combined with past simple, such as past continuous and past perfect. For example, you could say something like this. Listen, I arrived at the restaurant, but John had already left. He was sitting in a cafe across the street, waiting for me. Whoa, much more interesting, isn't it, when telling a story in the past? Notice that I start with past simple. I arrived at the restaurant. Okay, but then I go, but John had already left. That's past perfect. And then I continue. He was sitting in a cafe across the street waiting for me. That's past continuous. You see, so it's this masterful use of past simple with past continuous and past perfect together that a B2 level learner needs to master in order to tell good stories, share good past experiences, like in an effective way. Another topic you need to master to get to B2 is the passive voice. A B2 level learner can use a wider range of passive structures, particularly for impersonal reporting. For example, you can say, it is said that the company is planning to expand. Instead of just saying, people say that the company is planning to expand. I want you to listen closely to the difference in these two sentences. The first version, which is more standard, listen. People say that the company is planning to expand. Fine. Now, slightly more advanced, listen. It is said that the company is planning to expand. You see? It is said. That is a more advanced way of using the passive voice. Can you use the passive voice like that? If not, time to study the passive voice in more detail. Moving on to the next grammar topic you need to master to get to a solid B2 level of English, gerunds and infinitives. A B2 learner uses more complex verb patterns. For example, I regret to inform you that the position has been filled. Or, I regret telling him what happened. Let me say that again, the examples. Listen closely to these examples. These are examples of production that we teachers expect from a B2 level learner. I regret to inform you that the position has been filled. I regret telling him what happened. Really cool, isn't it? Another topic you have to master when it comes to grammar is relative clauses. Now we are talking a little bit more about sentence structure and clauses, moving away from the verb tenses, all right? A B2 learner uses both defining and non-defining clauses effectively. For example, they can use sentences like this. My car, which I bought last year, has broken down again. Listen again. My car, which I bought last year, has broken down again. So the information in between commas here, which I bought last year, makes the sentence a non-defining clause. Why non-defining? Because I'm just adding extra information to my sentence. Let's say that the real information, the main point of the sentence is this. My car has broken down again. But if I want to add more details in the same sentence, I can use a non-defining clause. And then I have something like this. My car, comma, which I bought last year, comma, has broken down again. This is a non-defining clause. When it comes to defining or non-defining clauses, you have to be familiar with connecting ideas in your sentences using who, which, that, when, where, whose, even whom. All right? Which is even more advanced. So if that is a topic right now, as you are listening to me, if you go like, man, I have no idea how to do that, time to get to the books and start studying this. All right? Then we have the next topic, reported speech. Learners at B2 level can report what was said using a variety of verbs beyond just say and ask. So, yes, you are able to say something like this. He said that blah, blah, blah. She asked if blah, blah, blah. That's fine. But you can also use other reporting verbs. For example, the verb admit. Listen, she admitted to making a mistake. She admitted to making a mistake. Or even the verb claim. He claimed that he had not been informed. He claimed that he had not been informed. Hopefully, you can get a taste, a feel of what B2 level English sounds like in terms of grammar. Finally, another grammar topic you need to master is linking words and cohesive devices. A B2 learner uses a variety of words and phrases to connect and organize their ideas logically within and across sentences. For example, they can use although and in addition to link ideas in an essay, or use pronouns to refer back to a noun to avoid repetition. Aside from although and in addition, there are other more advanced linking words that a B2 learner needs to know and be able to use, like furthermore, moreover, however, nevertheless, nonetheless, on one hand, on the other hand, due to, owing to, for example, for instance, such as, namely, in sum, to sum up, in conclusion. You see, I can go on and on here, listing all the possible linking words and cohesive devices a B2 learner needs to know and needs to know how to use effectively in texts and even more formal presentations. Now, we have just covered the main grammar topics you need to master in order to get to B2. Now, let's move to vocabulary and talk a little bit about vocabulary topics. I mean, what kind of vocabulary you need to master in order to get to B2. So, a B2 level requires expanding vocabulary beyond basic words to include more sophisticated, natural-sounding language. Talking about general vocabulary first, listen. A learner should have a broad vocabulary. Broad means large, wide. Why? In order to be able to discuss a wide range of subjects, from everyday life to more abstract and technical topics. For example, a B2 level learner is able to discuss topics like environmental sustainability or even socioeconomic factors. You see, so I've already covered this before in previous episodes, but the key for you to move to B2, C1, C2, and higher levels like that is about being able to discuss more abstract topics. It's not only about talking about your routine, your everyday activities at work or whatever. You also need to discuss or be able to discuss topics like this that are more abstract: environmental sustainability, socioeconomic factors, technology and its relationship with human work, for example. Why? Because abstract topics naturally require more language. You need to know more language in order to successfully discuss these topics, share your opinions about them. If you have very limited language when it comes to grammar and vocabulary, you're not going to be able to engage in a conversation or discussion about these more abstract topics. And the higher you get in terms of level, the more advanced you become, the more comfortable you should be discussing these topics that are more complex, more advanced, more abstract. Still in vocabulary, we have phrasal verbs and collocations. This is a key area of improvement. Instead of using simple verbs, B2 learners should incorporate common phrasal verbs and collocations. For example, instead of "she started a new hobby," they might say "she took up a new hobby." For collocations, instead of "I did a mistake," they know that the correct way is "I made a mistake." You see? So listen closely, all right? These are all hints and clues I'm giving you here of what language at B2 level looks like. We also have word formation. This is actually one of my favorite topics to teach. I love teaching word formation because word formation is basically about being able to transform a word in other classes, in other word classes, simply by changing the prefix or the suffix. So the word is the same, but you are just changing the class, like from a noun to an adjective, to a verb, to an adverb, to an opposite adjective, an opposite adverb. That's how word formation is. So, at B2 level, learners can form different parts of speech from a single root word. A task might require them to change, for example, the word communicate to communication, or effective to effectively. You see? It's about transforming the word. Just to give another example here of what word formation is, let's pick the word employ. Employ is a verb. A boss employs people. A company employs people. But from that root word, employ, I can form other words that derive from it. From employ, I can go employee, employer, employment, unemployment, employed, unemployed. You see? This is word formation. At B2 level, you have to master the skill of coming up with different formations from a single root word. Finally, we have discourse markers. A B2 learner uses a range of markers to manage conversation and structure arguments smoothly. Examples include, like I just said, on the one hand, on the other hand, furthermore, when introducing new topics. All right? Now, I just gave you here the 13 topics you need to master when it comes to grammar and vocabulary in order for you to get to a solid B2 level. Let's just quickly recap here. All conditionals, future forms, modal verbs, narrative tenses, passive voice, gerunds and infinitives, relative clauses, reported speech, linking words and cohesive devices. Moving on to vocabulary, we have general vocabulary, and by that I mean being able to discuss more abstract topics. Then we have phrasal verbs and collocations, word formation, and discourse markers, which is connected to linking words and cohesive devices. But there's more. Aside from just worrying about these 13 main topics of grammar and vocabulary, you also have to worry about the skills and competencies in general Transitioning to B2 is marked by a shift towards greater fluency, greater accuracy, and strategic competence in all four skills. What are the main skills? Reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So, when it comes to reading, you also have to worry about this. A B2 learner can understand the main ideas of complex texts and distinguish between a writer's opinion and factual information. For instance, they can read an article about the economy and not just grasp or understand the general topic, but also identify the author's specific viewpoint. What does that author, that writer, think about this topic? What is his or her opinion? When it comes to listening, a B2 learner has the ability to follow fast-paced, detailed conversations with different accents. That is crucial. They should be able to listen to a radio show, for example, or a podcast, and understand not just the topic, but also the speaker's attitudes, feelings, and tones. Let me say that again. When you listen to a podcast, at B2, you don't understand just the topic people are talking about. You also understand the speaker's attitudes, feelings, and tone as they discuss that topic. You see, it's much more nuanced. When it comes to writing, a B2 learner should be able to write well-structured, coherent essays and reports. They can present a clear viewpoint on an issue and support their argument with reasons and examples. For example, at B2, you should be able to write a report that outlines what activities were organized, evaluate the success of the day, and make suggestions for future fundraising events. Just an example topic. All right? Finally, when it comes to speaking, a solid B2 learner speaks with a noticeable degree of fluency and spontaneity. Fluency and spontaneity, meaning that you're not only fluent in your communication, in your verbal communication, but you're also spontaneous. Is your speaking in English, your communication in English, spontaneous? If not, if it still sounds kind of stiff, robotic, you are not at B2 yet. You need to develop that skill. Why? Because developing your fluency and spontaneity allows you to participate in conversations and discussions without long pauses, without too much hesitation. You are able to present detailed descriptions and sustain your opinions in a debate, for example. Just to give you another example here, imagine you are discussing a controversial topic like politics. You can express disagreement politely and justify your opinion. You see? Now, in order for you to engage in that kind of discussion, maybe something more political that is deeper, more complex, and highly emotional, I would say, you need more language in your repertoire in order to politely disagree with someone and share your own view and keep that discussion, that conversation going. A B2 learner of English is able to do that already. Maybe not with the same degree of sophistication a C1 and C2 learner would be able to do, but a B2 learner is totally able to engage in those kinds of discussions that are more complex. You see? And there you have it. These are the main topics you need to master in order to become a true, solid B2 level learner. We covered the 13 main topics I promised you at the beginning of the video, plus the 4 main skills. What does that mean for reading, writing, speaking, and listening to be at B2 level? Now, I understand that while this list is not so long, getting to the nooks and crannies of it, getting to all the minor details here and studying each one of these topics can take a long time and can be daunting, can be challenging. So if you're looking for some extra 101 help, I highly recommend you book a 101 call with me. That's a fluency discovery call where for 90 minutes, 1 hour and a half, you and I will talk on Zoom. I'm going to be listening closely to you. And by the end, I'm going to help you determine what your current level of English is, what your strengths are, your blind spots or weaknesses are. And then After our call, I'm going to send you by email a detailed action plan suggesting the topics and also the resources and what you need to do and use in order to get to the next level. It's going to be great to meet you and talk to you a little bit about your English journey and your English goals. And if you want to learn more about this process of going from B1 level to B2 level, how to unstuck your English and get out of this intermediate plateau you may be experiencing, you might want to watch this video next. In this video, I share valuable tips to help you get to that solid B2 level of English. You don't want to miss it. Check it out.